Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I'm your host, Josh, and I am from Toon Army Philly. Thanks for joining me, and thanks, Lee, for sending us over. Lots to talk about, obviously, after our game with Atletico Madrid, ending 0 for the Toon and 2 for Atleti. But before we get into all of that stuff, if you don't mind hitting that thumbs up button, it really helps the channel grow and continue to reach more like-minded fans like yourself. Also, consider subscribing if you haven't already. They're both free to do and they help out tremendously. Also, if you feel so inclined, there are a few membership scheme options starting at just 99 cents, going up to $4.99. So again, if you want to support Lee and the channel and all the other good guys, please go ahead and do it. So get your chats in, and if you want to guarantee it's read, please feel free to do a super chat. So, welcome to member Stuart Chappell and Eddie Contreras. Wanted to shout you both out. Thank you for joining and becoming a member. So, where do we start? I guess we just start with the beginning, and we'll go from there. I would say the first half as a whole, if you're summarizing it, it was pretty positive. Lots of good things happening. One of Elanga, I think, was one of the big bright spots, really giving their left back lots of problems as he was coming down the right wing. So I think that's something positive for sure. However, unfortunately, no one was in the middle to put it away. And definitely, as we've said many times, and I think many fans have been saying, we miss Isak. But we'll get into that conversation at the end. I'm sure there's lots to talk about off the pitch, but let's start with on the pitch and more the topics du jour. And again, share with me your thoughts, guys. Love to hear what you have to say and your thoughts on the game. But yeah, I think Elanga really liked what I saw. Gave some good crosses, and some of them weren't perfect, but I think given time, those hopefully should yield something as we continue to grow and develop that chemistry. Another thing that I noticed in the first half, on probably more negatives, there were a few times where Gordon had some opportunities, and just his first touch was a little off. And who knows, maybe that ties into what happened later in the game. We'll get into that. But yeah, obviously that injury not looking good. So we'll get into that as well. And the other big thing I think from the first half is Joe Linton in the midfield. I think Joe Linton played a very solid game in the midfield. He was everywhere like we know and love. Not perfect game, but I don't think that's what you ever expect from Joe Linton. And at least not what I expect. He's going to make mistakes, but I think he's just everywhere, and he gives you that passion and everything that we need. So I liked what I saw from Joe Linton in the first half. But again, please, guys, share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you are thinking about the game as well. And obviously, again, probably ended on a sour note, so we may be a little bit in the dumps, which is understandable, especially everything that's been going on. But I would, like I said, I do want to start on some of the bright spots of the first half, because I think there was some positives to take from it. And another important thing I think we need to just keep in mind with all of it is none of the games did we full out play our starting 11. I think a lot of these were mixed and hodgepodge of kind of starting players and rotational players. So I think there was a lot to be desired, or not desired. We weren't seeing the full thing, and I think that kind of plays into Eddie's kind of repertoire. He tends to do that. I think we know Eddie, and there's an element he's probably already thinking about the Villa game, and an element of not wanting to show his cards. I think that's why he tried some different things. But yeah, Welsh tune, welcome, welcome. It sounds like you agree that first half of Elanga was very electric. You say, I agree. He was very electric. I liked how even some of the times it was just he kind of kicked the ball into space and run onto it because he has that pace to burn. So yeah, excellent stuff there for sure. But yeah, keep sharing those thoughts, guys. Would love to hear it. And again, as the numbers are crying, and thanks for joining us as the game is ending, and maybe you're funneling out of the stadium. Please keep hitting that thumbs up as you always do. It really is appreciated. The other big talking point, at least to me, that jumped out and was Ashby in the midfield. When we got the starting lineup on the feed, even the commentator there was a bit confused on who was going to be where, and they put Trippier in the midfield, not Ashby. And I don't know why. Something in my gut said maybe it was going to be Ashby, but yeah. Hold on a second, guys. Just give me 1 second. So yeah, question from Eddie, and keep them coming. Should we focus on lower profile attackers? I mean, Harvey Barnes is slacking of late and a touch evading Mr. Gordon. Interesting. I think I follow what you're saying, Eddie. So I actually was thinking at one point. I mean, again, Harvey Barnes is not necessarily as two-way committed as say your Almirons were or Jacob Murphy, but I do feel like I see Barnes backtracking more. I wonder if some of it was fatigue as the game went on, because I do agree with you, Eddie. As the game went on, I do think I saw some more uh, kind of laxidation. And yeah, Eddie, I gotcha. First touch of Aiden Gordon. I fully agree. That was one of the things that I was mentioning. So shout out. But yeah, um, again, but I think if unfortunately it's one of those things where if we could kind of stopped it at halftime, I think the feelings were pretty positive, at least from my end. Share, let me know what you guys thought. Again, let's ignore the second half for right now. Were you pleased with the first half? Because I think I was. But like I was starting to say, one of the things I found interesting was Harrison Ashby in the midfield. And why I found it interesting, not necessarily because I think it's like some sort of magical solution we've just stumbled on or anything like that. It's more from the perspective of it reminded me one of the foundations of Eddie's strengths. And I think Eddie can sometimes have creative solutions. We've seen him do it in the past. You know, the famous example, Joe Linton becoming the midfielder that we know and love. So I think there could be some other things there that could help us. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by that, and I think that's a little helpful. So yeah, keep the comments coming if you can, guys. I would love it. It helps me kind of interact with you guys. Um, but I think Ashby did pretty well, and so real quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up um, the the player ratings. So hopefully you guys can see this. I'm just looking at Fought Mob. So interestingly enough, I guess they did just update it because I think these numbers were slightly different. I thought a moment ago, but they ranked the midfield pretty flat. They they docked Lascelles a good bit, but I think when you look at Ashby, I think it was a solid one. He had 91% accurate passes, chances created, two. So I think that's a solid option. Who knows? Maybe Eddie can continue to work on it. Is more what I'm getting at, and I think would be interesting to see where that goes. Just some of the overall stats I wanted to show you guys. So in the end, did end up being we led possession, total shots on target ended up favoring Atletico. Shots on target ended up favoring Atletico. We had the greater of the big chances, and again, that's one of these things that we keep talking about with missing Isak. We're missing a little bit of that lethal stuff and clinical, but accurate passes. You can see we had the possession, so that makes sense that we had more passes, and obviously they fouled us more, but they had more corners. So these are just the top level. Again, would love to hear your guys' thoughts. What were your overall thoughts of the first half? Please let me know. But so let me just switch it back for a moment. And so, yeah, like I said, I think if you look at the first half in isolation, lots and lots of positives to take. Then comes the second half, and unfortunately, things did not get off to a good start. And I'm going to preface this: if you were like me and watching this from home, it sounds like it was something that affected just about everyone watching from home. Pretty early on in the first half, in the second half, and for about 10 to 15 minutes, the feed went down. Which, let's just take a quick pause on that and say, I'm not a tech guy, contrary to me doing the show right now. But it's quite frustrating to see how something that is well established, no effective PSR, they can spend all the money they need in the world for experts, whatever, and we still keep having these things, especially when we're paying, we're paying money for it. It's just it's crazy to me. Cheers from Welsh Toon. Atletico haven't played in 6 days, hence why they changed their whole team at 60 minutes. We only played yesterday. Yeah, and first, I think when you get into the second half, you could clearly see there was some fatigue showing as the game went on. And I think that's to be expected. And I think that's where a lot of our concerns in the broader scope are coming from as fans is I think many of us are not delusional in understanding that when we're playing our top 11 and people are fit, I think we're pretty competitive. There's a reason why we made Champions League, but we don't have the squad depth to compete in multiple tournaments, in multiple campaigns. So that. Shout out to my friend from Asia. I'm not sure what language it is, and unfortunately, I don't speak that, but thanks for joining us. And please hit a like button. But yeah, again, I think we have to remember all these factors that play into it. And I do think the fatigue is a little bit understandable, as Welsh Toon said. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. Cheers from Korea. Thank you, my friend. Hopefully you got to see them. You're live and in person yourself. But clarify what you mean, Ian. I'm not sure what you mean by literally threw a grenade. I mean, maybe you're referencing to Gordon and the injury. That's that's not looking good. But as we get into the second half, like I said, I did miss a chunk of it. I actually missed the second goal. The feed cut out for me right after the first goal. And the stream was being a little wonky. So I wish I could have rewind it because, to be honest, that counterattack a little bit happened so fast. I kind of missed who was quote unquote to blame for that one. So let me know what you guys thought, and if anyone was to blame on those, or if they were just well done by Atletico. Welsh Tune with the question. Thank you, my friend. Do you think it's going to be a Sula up top next week, or will we be able to buy a striker? Not particularly hopeful myself. I think with what has just happened to Anthony Gordon, unless heaven forbid, it's really not bad. I do agree with you, Welsh Tune. I mean, I don't think we really have any other option other than Asula. But to me, I think it's going to be that. But yeah, Ian. Okay, so you're saying the grenade. You're referencing to Isak. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to the Isak chat. Obviously, that's what everyone wants to talk about. I am very well aware of. I would say our old friend, but I don't think he's anyone's friend that is a fan of the tune at this moment in time. Andre, I don't know if you're just trolling us a bit, but fair enough, a little banter. But I don't think Sesko is going to be wearing any of our numbers. So, but like I said, back to Welsh Tune, I do think it's unfortunately going to be a Sula. I do think we will bring in at least Vissa. I'm curious to see who else we may go to. But yeah, no one's going to be in for next week, in my opinion. So yeah. But thank you all. Keep the comments coming. Much appreciated. But honestly, I think the biggest thing probably overshadowing the second half for me was the Gordon injury. And I think we got to talk about it. I don't know if there's any of the post games already been covered. Obviously, we know Eddie. He's probably not really going to say anything too conclusively at this time. I mean, after all, he's not really going to know. But it does not look good. Fortunately, he was able to walk off on his own strength and everything. So the only thing is, and I'm not a doctor, but I feel like I've heard from others who talk in the past that injuries to the ACL doesn't mean like you're not going to be able to walk. It's just it's going to be more for that high speed stuff. So we need a hard worker to free up Bruno. Absolutely, we need some more midfield depth. It was interesting seeing Gallagher at one point. I know there was some rumors around Gallagher previously of Palace. Simi Cutters, welcome, my friend. Yeah, I feel like every time we try to maybe get a sliver of hope or positivity for anything it just vanishes immediately. But thanks for joining us, Simi. But yeah, unfortunately, and I'd love for you guys to say, I mean, I was briefly watching Lee's and Dale's feed while the stream went down when the second goal went in. I know I heard Lee say, like, he didn't blame Pope. He said it was a pretty well taken goal by Griezmann, I believe he said. So, but tell me about it. Like I said, unfortunately, I missed it because the Newcastle stream went down, which was quite frustrating. But yeah. But let's look at some of the player ratings per FOTMob. So let me just pull that back up for a second. Real quickly, another comment. Yeah, like we've said, you're spot on. We need more depth, so that way, not just Bruno, but all of our players do not have that burnout. So, like I said, let's pull up the FOTMob. and look at the stats. So, player of the match went to Julian Alvarez per Fought Mob, which I think all in everything figures. Yeah, Simi, that's what I said. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a sign of things to come sometimes with all of these little things going wrong. But we've got to plug along. And I do think once the games start going, as long as things don't go disastrous out the gate, I do think hopefully that'll be what we need just to start changing the narrative and be talking about other things. But like I was saying, looking at the ratings, so player of the match went to Alvarez per Fought Mob. Interestingly, Anthony Gordon, a 5.9. Curious what you guys think. I really don't think he was so poor today. I'd be curious what you guys thought. I'm not saying that I think Gordon had an amazing game, but I think 5.9 is a bit harsh. Thanks, Ian, for the comment. We've been slapped hard, but I loved Eddie's presser at the end. We signed no one last season and won a cup. I will be proud to lead them out. Absolutely, Ian. I mean, keep your comments coming in about the game. I want to talk more about the game, but I think we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Obviously, there's just so much bigger going on beyond this friendly right now. And one of the biggest things that worries me, Ian, and I don't know if it worries you guys, is last summer when we had the frustrating summer we did, I said pretty early on to a lot of my friends that I was worried for Eddie. And because eventually everyone forgets about the window, you move on, it gets into the games, you're talking about decisions and substitutes and things like that. And instantly it becomes all of it is Eddie's fault. And there's an element that makes sense logically. When you're in the mid-season, it's, there's only so much you can blame. The window's closed. But I think we really, 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 as a fan base, need to remember that Eddie has done everything he can in trying to make the best of a bad situation. And one of my biggest fears this season is if things don't go well, which it very well could with the way things are looking, that we turn on Eddie. And I think that would only compound our problems. Cheers, NFT Extra, our sister channel. Thank you so much. A couple good comments in there. Ben Arfa, welcome. Don't know if it's actually you, bud, but if it is, that'd be great. No focal point. I agree. We just were lacking that today for sure. Welsh Tune, thank you again for keeping up with the comments. Really appreciate it. I thought Gordon was pressing very well, but some of the drilled passes into him were lacking a good initial touch. Yep, we've talked about that. Fully agree, Welsh Tune. Valid insight. Simi, I think the Isak drama has really disrupted the squad in terms of confidence. Yeah, I think at this point it's almost impossible for it not to, in some capacity, bled into the room. The one thing I do find interesting and I think is going to be vital is how much can Eddie or whomever, regardless of what transfers come in or don't, how much can we rally the troops and get that buy-in? Because again, the fear is if we have a bad season, Tonali's probably going to want to leave, understandably so, and things like that. So, like I said, we'll keep it a little bit more on the game for a couple more minutes, and then I'll start going into some bigger picture discussions because, again, obviously there's lots to talk about. Comments keep on coming in. Great. Ben Arfa, agree. I don't think Vissa can be a focal point. Yeah, I don't think that's Vissa's style per se. I think he'd be very good with link up. But yeah, not necessarily your classic center forward. Semi Cutters. I think the owners are getting off lightly. They deserve some criticism. I do agree with you for sure there, Simi. The only thing I do find a bit interesting is some recent comments from Craig Hope and the Geordie Journos and some of the other journalists out there. Some of them that have even been critical in recent times have said some things saying that they've recently got some information that has given them some clarity and understanding. I definitely agree with you. I don't think they're scot free from blame. I mean, the biggest thing is, the sporting directors. This has extremely jeopardized us. And again, these are all things that don't factor into PSR. So there's really no excuse to get those things wrong. Ian says, I mean, more in terms of rallying cry made me well up. Okay, gotcha. Eddie Contreras, thank you, buddy. If Liverpool want to spend, they can, but it would be safer to save money in case they lost a player to injury in the first few months. I really have this weird feeling, Eddie, that it's getting weirder, especially after the comments last night, which I like Eddie's comments being very harsh on or very blunt on Isak, but I just don't see Liverpool putting up the money. I mean, for me personally, I know we say 150. I think unfortunately, with how everything's happened, the value does slightly get a dent. But I don't think we can sell Isak if we don't bring anyone in. I'd almost, and maybe I'm being sour grapes, but I'd almost rather see him rot for half a season, even if he's not even if he's going to refuse to play. But part of me thinks if he stays, he'll eventually have to play. Otherwise, he's hurting his own value. He's going to hurt who's interested in him and things like that. I fully agree with you, Ian. At the end of the day, the buck stops with them. And I do think, again, they have questions to answer. And my biggest complaint is somebody needs to come and talk to the media that is not Eddie. And they need to do it for all of us, not just some behind the doors thing that is to the journos that then the journos relay to us that, hey, give them some slack. We need to get it directly from, the horse's mouth. Cheers, buddy, from Korea. Don't sacrifice team spirit for personal gain. I agree. I mean, to me, staying on the Isak thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know it's been divisive, and I think as time has gone on, I think people are giving Isak less slack. In the beginning, when this was all starting, there was a little bit of slack given to Isak, I think, by some fans. But to me, I've said Isak's dead to me. I mean, I've done a Jedi mind wipe almost of anything Isak, because to me, the way he's left has absolutely destroyed anything that he's ever done for us. I don't even care. To me, the only goal from the Carabao Cup now is Dan Burns' goal. I don't care about, I've heard a lot of people say that he'll still have that important moment. And to me, and I'm just sharing my personal opinion, to each their own. But to me, I don't care about that moment anymore. I think it's null and void. And the shame of it all, and again, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions because I know this one divides opinions. So please let me know. I was at peace with Isak leaving next summer, assuming that we didn't, by some miracle, win the Prem, or by some miracle we didn't win the Champions League or almost win the Champions League. And again, let me make it very clear: I didn't think either of those were happening. But I'm saying something that crazy was the only way I felt we were keeping Isak beyond next year. But for him to do what he's done, it shows as it's been said, no respect to us. Because not only, he has totally derailed and messed up our entire summer and puts us in a really tricky situation on how we do this, because we also got to remember that this sets a precedent to future stars coming to Newcastle. And I think that's what makes this as a challenging for us and the owners is there's an element of like, we can't just simply give him what he wants, because then that might set a precedent to others that if they just want to leave, they force these moves. So yeah. Sorry, missed a couple comments. Yes, Ian, I agree. It's like Eddie's been a one-man band, and I mean, in my opinion, that guy, even more and more by the day, deserves a statue. Sammy's agreeing it's beyond the point of no return. If he had made a speech at the trophy and said that he wanted progress in his career and thanks to all the fans, that would have been so much what. And I agree with you. If he had kind of been honest with us and still trained and all these things, I think there's an element of it would have been disheartening, but we could have understood it as long as he did it with respect. But almost by doing what he's done, it's allowed his value to go down. And that's part of why, to me, it goes beyond just the fact he wants to leave. It's how he's done it. It's made us look bad. It's hurt his value and what we can try and ask for and all these kind of things. So real quickly, I want to pause. Thank you so much for joining live. Got 50 of you watching. Keep hitting that likes. It's much appreciated. I just appreciate you joining with me. Hopefully you like the content, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these. But you guys help determine that, and if you guys enjoy it. So make sure you hit those likes. Ian said, as I get it, just get 2 strikers and then let it go through. And I'm with you, Ian. As long as they're the right strikers, I'm ready to move on. Frankly, if we could replace him and have everything set in stone, I never want to see Isak in the black and white ever again. But at the same time, right now, as things stand today on the 9th of August at 6:30 UK time, we can't let him go. And again, let's not forget that Liverpool have not even gotten within a Grand Canyon's distance of what he's actually worth. Cheers. Loyalty comes from being loyal to yourself. The team comes first. Yeah, and I agree. That's what I think made so much of this shocking is many of us did not think that this was Isak's character. Welsh Toon says he agrees with me. He's ruined his legacy. But you say you're unsure about Vissa. I do agree with you, and I think there's an element of I don't like what Vissa's doing. But I will say this in a slight, I don't know if defense is the right word, but I think a lot of people have drawn parallels, and I do think there are some distinct differences. But again, I still think he should have trained and done all those things. I don't think you just do that. So I agree it's a bad look. But here are the things why I think the Vissa thing is ever so slightly different. For one, he's in a situation where his contract expires at the end of the season. So him kind of playing hardball is a lot easier for him to do. Give me 1 second, guys. So sorry about that, guys. Somebody at the doorbell. He's on his last year. So, and there was also apparently a agreement. Now, again, some of this was said about Isak too, but apparently there was an agreement saying that if a certain value was offered, he would be free to go, and that they have not honored that. So, again, there's a lot of hearsay there, but if that is true, I can slightly understand, and it's a bit. I think it does give a little bit of a difference, but again, do agree Welsh tune. It's a little unsettling. Simi saying the irony from Liverpool fans laughing about Isak's behavior when their fans were scathing about Trent. 100%. I mean, I love how they wanted to absolutely crucify him, and yet they love when someone's doing it. And I think, to be honest, you'll find if hopefully we get to do this more often. One of the things I always love about us football fans, and we all do it, is the kind of dual standards we have, even sometimes in our own judgment. And how when it's being done in our favor, we'll love it, but when it's not in our favor, we'll hate it. And I agree with you. Honor is more important than profit sometimes. Ian, I get that he wants more money and that he might have been promised, but the timing was horrific. And I agree, Ian. All of us can relate as working adults. If someone's going to pay you more, of course you're going to want to do it. Of course you'll be open to that idea. And you'll feel that you deserve that money. And he did deserve more money. But there's professional ways to go about things, and there's unprofessional ways to do it. David saying Isak's a snake. But it does kind of look like a duck, but I do think it is a snake. I agree. Newcastle must not be swayed by the stakes, and some good banter there. But yeah, it is an insult to us and our club. Simi, Brentford aren't going to let Wissa go easily. They already lost in Buemo. They will try to take us to the cleaners and ask for an extortionate price. Yeah, that's the big thing with Vissa. It really is going to come down to what is the price. We need to see that price. Yep, more great insights from our friend down in Korea. Eddie, are the fans somewhat to blame? We put them on a pedestal, and our lack of stability in the front office may have affected Isak. I would support him should this evolve to him staying at NUFC. That's an interesting shout, Eddie. I don't think I would go as far as to say we're to blame, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We can't know that. So our job is to love and cherish the players and make them feel like this is home. And I think that's what we did for Isak. We made him feel like one of our own. And yeah, it's. I just think it would be harsh to say us, but I do think the front office, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. 100%. Thank you, Simi. Much appreciated. Please smash that thumbs up, guys. Really appreciated. Newcastle, prestigious school. Yep. 35 million will get the Vissa deal done, I reckon. Not a bad price, really. Yeah, let's say it's 35. Ian, I would agree with you. That's about a 5 million overpay. But I think given the circumstances, it's money well spent. Because I do think Vissa would provide us some good dynamics, because he has had relations with an Elanga-like player. I think, well, I guess Mbeumo and Elanga are a bit different, but I still think there's some ability there. And if I remember correctly, Vissa has some flexibility across the front three, which we all know Eddie loves. So, again, thank you so much for all those comments. Much appreciated for sure. Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, Simi. Vissa over Jackson all day. I really don't rate Jackson. I mean, I know he's raw and maybe he can develop, but there's just something about Jackson. I can't explain why, but he just doesn't strike my fancy. Yeah. So Who would you guys go? And it doesn't even have to be a rumor. I know for me, my pick that I've been shouting, and there has been, I think, some very minor rumors, but I would really like, and I think the last one available that would make me excited would be Giancarlo Ramos. I really think that could be a good option for us from PSG because even before this whole Isak thing started, I actually kind of said I'd like for us to go for him because I think that would kind of he's got the pedigree, but also I think there would be an element of that big signing that we at the beginning of the summer we were hoping and thinking we were going to get, and getting someone from PSG just that alone I think would have reflected and gave it a stigma of it was really big signing. So that would be my pick if I could truly have anyone. I think that would be someone that the fans could get excited about. I think there's still plenty of time to develop him. And then again, just like Aaron just said there, if you do Vissa and Ramos together, um, I think that would be a very solid pair. And I also want to shout out, I appreciate all your comments, buddy, but I like this one too. And I think as much as we love to rib Man U, I think this one's so crucial. And this is why I think Man U have struggled is when you don't have that good foundation, eventually that's going to seep into what's on the field. And even though right now things still can more or less look okay on the field, but it will take time eventually and will seep in. Simi agrees that would be a statement signing for sure. Actually, since it's kind of recent, would any of you guys like Sorloth? Sorloth, I know, I'm pretty sure had a pretty decent season last season for Atletico, and he's more of your classic center forward. Would any of you guys be excited about that idea? Ian coming in, I like the Samu lad from Porto. That I can't speak too much about Samu. He's kind of so new on the radar that I don't know much about him. I mean, the one thing I would say is anyone out there with raw potential and Eddie, I think that's a match made in heaven because I think we all know Eddie is so good at extracting the value out of people. And I think that was on display today. I'd be curious if any of you guys agree with me. But I'm not saying I want to see Lascelles start games, but what I've seen from Lascelles makes me comfortable to rotate him in cup games, early rounds, maybe last 10 minutes to see out someone. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but again, we do need to bolster it. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think Lascelles could still maybe give us one more shift, if you will. And I felt similar about some of the youngsters like Ashby. Maybe he could give us a shift. I don't think it's going to give us a game changer, but it might buy us half a season till we have more time to invest in those because we're running out of time this window. And I think striker almost needs to be the priority, even if we don't get anything else. How are the lads saying Thiaw and Samu would be great signings? I have always liked Thiaw personally. I think it's made sense. I know a little bit more about him as I loosely watched some AC Milan. But again, from what a lot of people are saying, sounds like Samu would also be right there. Yeah. Send players away who don't respect the team. And I agree. I think no one's in disagreement that we should keep Isak. It's just we need to make sure we're not getting rid of him just before we get what he's worth. Eddie says, imagine getting Samu, Goncalo Ramos, or maybe he's talking about Colomwani. I know we were also linked with him, and Vissa. There is an element, Eddie. I do love that. And then keep Alex just to let him rot. That would be kind of funny. But I think that might be a little bit of our vengeful sides getting the better of us. Ian, he's a big lad. I'm thinking maybe you're talking about Sorloth there. Um, yeah, you're saying if it was Cree, Isak would have already been discarded. Fair enough. Thank you for the comments. Uh, yep, in the Ian, we're in talks with Moani. Expect Chelsea to bid at any moment. Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, I think a lot. The interesting thing I do think we might see in the last couple weeks, and a couple other, I forget who, but somebody else said this. We may see that because a lot of the traditional big teams have acted, that maybe we'll be able to get less competition. Now, that might just be pipe dream. We've been saying things like this that man, you don't have the money to compete with us for Sesko. Obviously, they can compete with us on wages, but we didn't think they could compete with us from that. So, yeah. But I wouldn't mind Moani. I mean, again, I think we just need young, raw players. And then I think having Vissa as your Callum Wilson replacement is a great opportunity. And listen, we all love Asula and hope great things for him. So hopefully Asula can find some form and build on that. Absolutely. And I agree with you, Ian. That's the one thing I've been trying to say. I know sometimes I think as you Brits like to say, play call me a happy clapper, some of my friends, but I think there is still a way that when this all comes to an end, that's when we have to judge it. It doesn't mean we can't say where things stand right now, and things standing right now look very bad, but it's still within the team's control to make up for what they've messed up. And at the end of the day, if they make up for what they've messed up to this point, things can still end positively. It's seeming more and more unlikely by the day, obviously. So, Rumble Red. Moani is pretty solid, but God knows how Prem ready he is. We've dug our grave. If it's true, what I've heard about us ignoring Isak being ready to go, player power is stronger than ever. Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges nowadays is I almost think of it kind of like diving, in that it's now been allowed to almost grow and mutate for so long that it's now seen as kind of not inappropriate. And back in the day, none of this stuff would have ever been tolerable. And I think that's what is just such a shame of it. Because there is part of me that thinks that I don't think Isak maybe had this intention. That doesn't make it any better, but I don't know if Isak thought it was going to go to this. And one of the biggest things that I think is driving this, and is one of I think the biggest problems of modern day football, is the agent. Because let's be honest, the agent doesn't get paid, and his best paydays are going to be if Isak moves. So it's not in the agent's favor for Isak to just stay, or any player to just stay somewhere once their life. It's like, think about it in your own job. A lot of times they say if you stay at your own company and get promotions, you're going to get less promotions than if you go to another company on the open market. And unfortunately, that's sometimes true. And this comes back to, in my opinion, some of the sad thing about the world we live in today is that sometimes loyalty and honor is not valued, and it's frustrating. I'm just going to go back. Simi saying instead of having legend status, he's now got Michael Owen status. Yeah, fully agree with you, Simi. To me, the moment he leaves, and assuming we get the value we get and everything, like I mean, absolutely will hate him for the rest of his career. If he comes back to St. James's, I hope we all boo him. I mean, to me, it's unforgivable. Um, I do get what you're saying, Ian, and that's one of the things I try to remember myself is at the end of the day, like it or not, and ignoring the amount of money, it is a job and how we would act in certain situations. But again, I still think there's an element of how you can go about it with respect. And I think that's a big thing that we've talked about. Rumble Red, Eddie likes your point. However, Eddie Howe might be sympathizing with Isak. He's preparing to let him down easy if the bid doesn't come. He's making it seem like he's not playing Isak. Yeah, possibly. I mean, obviously, we're trying to keep him from an injury. I think might be part of it. But again, to me, and again, I asked you guys a few moments ago, and I don't think I saw it. What to you, with everything that's now happened, is the minimum you would accept from Liverpool and think it still is a decent deal? Because to me, I would say my absolute minimum needs to be 140. Because as much as I do think he truly is valued at 150, because of all the circumstances around it, he's kind of devalued himself and helped Liverpool a bit. So, give me 1 second. I just just need a little bit of water. Ian says 130. Okay, a bit low for my taste. 140, Eddie. Welcome, Richard. Yeah, I know I'm not as handsome as Lee. Lee will be on shortly with some more content, but he was gracious enough to let me have a shot and do a instant match reaction as he's doing other post-match content that will be coming shortly. So make sure you have those notification bells clicked, hit the like button, subscribe, so that way you know the second it drops. By wrangling our fans and making it seem we want him gone, we are effectively lowering his costs. I do get what you're saying, Eddie. By us turning on him, it almost hurts his cost, but I'm not sure if I fully agree. I don't think that would hurt his cost for me, but yeah. Philemon, you must be a Liverpool fan if you say the 110 is good because you paid more for Florian Wirtz, who is not prem proven and not a striker. So, yeah, that's malarkey. But hey, maybe you just have a different opinion. To each their own. So, let's move on to, we're going to stay live for about 10 more minutes. So if you got any other questions you'd really like to know or any other opinions you really want to share, please get them in. I'll make sure we touch on them. But like I said, about 10 more minutes, and then stay tuned for lots of other great content from Lee and crew. I agree with you, Ian. I don't think we'll get the asking price of 150 anymore. That's why I said, to me, I think 140 is kind of the new value. I think that's what we can do. Rumble Red said I'd take 120 over nothing. I mean, I do get what you're saying, but the only way we don't get anything for Isak is if we literally let him rot for 3 years, and I don't think that's happening either. So I do understand the sentiment of what you're saying, but this isn't, say, a Trent Alexander thing of if we don't sign him now, we may never get money for him. I fully agree again with you, our friend from Korea. If we don't handle this the right way, we risk making ourselves look like a joke going forward. I agree with you, Rumble Red. If the window was to end today, my faith is broken in the plan. But as Ian says rightfully, it's not over yet. So hopefully some stuff to still go. I know during the match, I think I saw some stuff, and again, not to put any speculative rumors out there because I'm not there, but I think I heard that a couple people put some positive posts about the Malick Thiaw situation with AC Milan. Again, I think that would be a great person to add into that rotation of center back depth. Um, and again, if we could get in, hopefully, Vissa and someone else, I think that would be enough to get us to January. Because again, I have one other positive thing I think, and I'm curious of your guys' opinion. Uh, One of the silver linings I've tried to, and maybe it's just me trying to cope and try and find any positive, but I have a feeling that, albeit this window didn't go well, it allows us to be really aggressive in January. And I know that doesn't help us, but in the immediate, which we certainly needed, but I do think there's maybe a little bit of hope still there that we could do that. Ian, I can't remember if it was actually deadline day, but you're certainly right. I know it was later in the window because I was actually talking to a friend about this recently. We bought Isak after the first game of the season because one of my friends, who's a Chelsea supporter, was saying he thought the window ended next week, and I said no, it'll still be open. Ricardo, good question. I don't know. I don't live in Italy. They do rotate him. He's not a firm starter week in, week out. I know when he was at Schalke, because I watch a bit of Bundesliga, he was very well liked at Schalke. But I think the magic bullet, so to speak, with anything, any transfer is, I think, the Eddie Howe effect. And again, I know many people have different opinions on Eddie. And again, some of the criticisms he gets are fair. But I think one thing that we can all agree on is he's very good at talent extraction with his players and developing players. We've seen that time after time. So I think whatever you buy, more than likely, at least the track record has shown us to date, that he's likely to be able to take him to at least a little bit better than what you brought them in. I'd seen news that the new manager of AC does not want to sell him and will not rotate. Yeah, I heard something about that as well, Eddie, that there was something like all of a sudden, because apparently they agreed a fee with like a team, I want to say in France or something earlier in the window, and now they're apparently raising the price or something because we're around. I like your idea. Yeah, we'll send them to the North Korea team, maybe. Ian Contreras, it would be silly for him to say he wants to sell. I mean, again, I agree with you. I think that's one of the main things with any of these kind of comments is, like you said, you can't shoot yourself in the feet. Welsh Tune, I like your optimism, Josh. It isn't all over till it's over with the window, but our current overall squad is lacking, especially for UCL. Fully agree with you, Welsh Tune. And I want to end on this one with you guys, and I want to get your thoughts. If, heaven forbid, we don't really bring in anyone else, let's say we only bring in Vissa or something like that, one player, do you think we need to be pragmatic and say the domestic cups we don't try this year, really? Because I don't think we've got the ability to compete on four fronts. And actually, I'll give you this question instead. I think this is a better one. For you, let's fast forward to the end of this season. What would qualify as a successful season? Ignore the players we bring in, ignore any of that. Just what results do we need? What achievements do we need for it to be successful? Because for me, the most important thing and the main thing we need to achieve this season for me is that we qualify for Champions League again. I don't really care too much how far we go in Champions League, especially if we can't strengthen. And I don't think that the domestic cups this year, given our situation, can be prioritized. Maybe we can prioritize the FA Cup because it's more the second half of the season, and maybe we could bring in some replacements by then in the January window. But again, under the assumption we don't bring in anyone, to me, the only thing that really, really, really matters this season is that we re-qualify for Champions League, because that's what's going to allow us to stop getting beat to teams like Man U, who can pay more in a wage. Because we do need to start incrementally creeping our wage bill up. I'm not saying we need to get to paying $300,000 plus or £3,000 players plus, but we do need to get to a point where we can at least compete with them. Because right now, I don't think we compete on wages. And again, let's imagine you're on the open market yourself. As much as we love the tune and everything when it comes to football, if you've got a job offer for one price and a job offer for a salary much higher, more than likely it's gonna be you're gonna pick the higher salary. It doesn't make us feel any better, and this is why PSR is a problem, as we love to talk about as Newcastle fans. Ian says, we brought no one in last season, won a cup, and we will go again, Eddie the legend. He did say that. It was a strong quote last night, and we love that spirit and fight. I'm glad to hear that Eddie's not been burned, because I did initially start to have feelings of worry if he would start to feel like left out to dry. But yeah, but I think we need more than last year. But I think realistically, if we can get back into Champions League, that year after year repetition is what's going to make the heartbreaks of Mbeumo, so to speak, in Šeško not happen. Because I have a coworker in my office who's a Man U fan, and I was teasing him the other day. I said, what is Man U going to do if they don't turn things around in the next 5 years? Because you're almost to the point where players who grew up did not grow up watching a good Man U team. And I think that's what, unfortunately, as much as it makes me queasy in the stomach to think that anyone logically would want to go to Man U over us right now, just on current form. Unfortunately, there are those kind of things going on, and I think it's, yeah. Adventures of Rex, welcome. I like your name. Best thing I've heard today is Vissa to Liverpool because they can't get Isak. That would be funny. Yeah, interesting. 1974 saying he thinks Saudi's losing interest. I can understand where the feelings have come from, but interestingly enough, a couple of the people said, as well as some other strong statements from Eddie last night, that Eddie was quite adamant that the Saudi group is still very interested. Absolutely, we will take care of Mr. Sung Soo. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it right, but that's what I've been hearing. Sung Soo. He's young, but he's loyal, and he's got so much potential. We would love for him to. We would love for any of these players to do great. We just want players that try. I got into an argument with a friend of mine recently, who I said I'd rather, and I mean this kind of hypothetically, but I think many of us would rather see 10 Dan Burns on the pitch, obviously excluding the goalie, than say having 10 Galacticos, because we want someone who gets what this team means. I mean, that's why someone in Philadelphia who knew nothing about Newcastle until around 2015, chose Newcastle as my team, is because of what you guys as a fan base in a city stood for. And that resonated with me because the sports city that I support here in the States, and is kind of where my parents are from, are kind of known for the same thing. Ian wants to know, can we keep relying on miracles? 100% no. I'm fully with you, Ian, and that's why to me, I'm not optimistic about the season if things don't change, because I think this would be a bridge too far. And he definitely needs a hand. Fully agree. Yeah, he needs a hand, and his health. But Eddie says, "Fly Magpies." Absolutely. Well, it has been absolutely wonderful to join you guys today. I appreciate all the likes and support that you've given. Again, if you are not already, please consider subscribing. It's free to do, and it helps out Newcastle Fans TV exponentially. Thank you all for watching along. I hope to be back with you more this season with some more instant match reactions. It's something we're trialing out, but we'll see how things go. It was a pleasure. Again, I'm Josh from Tune Army Philly. And until next time, away the lads and lasses.